Hi, I'm Dave Randle here on behalf of the Whale Center and the Katie Freshley Foundation with Dr. Raymond Moody. We're here at Walt Disney World planning for an exciting new seminar January 17, 18, 2014 on the logic of nonsense. Raymond is a PhD philosophy professor, he's an MD psychiatrist, he's a best-selling author of Life After Life, and he's traveled all over the world learning about people and creativity, and he is here to share today new insights on, of all things, nonsense. One of the quotes, Raymond, that I notice you use quite often is from Dr. Seuss, where he says, nonsense wakes up brain cells. Can you explain how that works?
It absolutely does. Paradoxically, people pay more attention to nonsense than they do to meaningful language. That's why advertisers so often use deliberate nonsense in their television commercials, because people really wake up, and the mind sort of works overtime when it's trying to process unintelligible nonsense.
And I noticed that the core of this program, you say that logic fails when reasoning about the unintelligible, meaningless, and nonsensical occurs, causing major difficulties for science and other academic disciplines. How so?
Well, one of the most common forms of arguments in the sciences, and especially the frontier sciences, is that some idea or other is nonsense. And up to this point, when we reached that point, we decided that something is unintelligible nonsense, we had to quit investigating it. Now what I've discovered is a new set of rules and principles that once we decide that something is nonsense, we don't have to stop looking into it. We can change our rules or switch to a new set of rules, and we can make our inquiry go forward, sometimes even into entirely new breakthroughs in a lot of different fields of knowledge.
One example of that, I know, having had an opportunity to read an advanced copy of the draft of your new book, is a quote you share which says, quote, "What, sir, would you make a ship sail against the wind and currents by lighting a bonfire under her deck? I pray you, excuse me, I have no time to listen to such nonsense." And that was Napoleon Bonaparte speaking to Robert Fulton, the inventor of the steamboat. Great example of what you're talking about. What are some other examples?
Well, the one that comes to my mind, being a space enthusiast, is space flight. Back even just a few decades ago, people said that the idea of flying to the moon was nonsense. Well, 1969 proved them wrong. Before that, people said that about human flight. Oh, we'll never fly, that's nonsense. But look what happened. So, historically, that's been one of the ways of knocking down any new idea that comes along. But now we have entirely new ways around this.
So there's some misconceptions about nonsense. What are some of the major misconceptions that you've identified?
Almost everyone entertains four false conceptions about nonsense. One is that nonsense is something inherently bad, but that's not the case. Doo-wop music, scat singing, humorous nonsense and all, Dr. Seuss's books, those provide pleasure for millions and millions of people, so nonsense is not something bad and undesirable. Number two, a lot of people think that nonsense is a form of non-existence or chaos. When you say that it's nonsense, you mean there's just nothing to it, or that it's incoherent. But actually, nonsense is not some form of language that is pre-linguistic. If you think of ordinary meaningful languages up here, and that nonsense is thought to be something down here, sublinguistic, actually the reality is nonsense is a higher form of language, something that's built on the top of language and therefore more complex. Number three, a lot of people think that nonsense is the same as falsehood. That is just absolutely not true. And it is It is something that interferes with people's thought process when they get nonsense and falsehood mixed up. And number 4, because of the previous 3, a lot of people think that nonsense is something that is totally beyond the realm of reason and logic. That's just not the case. We have new ways now of actually discerning the structure of meaningless, unintelligible nonsense in a way that opens up an entire unknown faculty of the mind.
Wow. Who are some of the nonsense leaders or heroes in this new field to provide examples of the power of nonsense?
The favorite American nonsense writer of millions of people is Dr. Seuss, whose birthday is now celebrated as a sort of holiday, and millions of kids have grown up just delighting in the work of Dr. Seuss. And of course, before that, there was Lewis Carroll, who gave us Alice in Wonderland and Through the Looking Glass, which are great works of nonsense writing that have really inspired lots of people and lots of scholars too.
I imagine there's many applications that nonsense can be applied to. What are some of the major fields that you might apply nonsense to?
Well, advertising is the most practical field, but psychology also. There are ways of working with nonsense to create really quite dramatic effects on people's minds. So it's a very valuable tool in psychology.
And how about economics, business, and industry, which everybody seems to be concerned about these days?
Yeah, I know. And you know, when the collapse took place, one of the problems were that they had created these financial instruments that even the people who composed them said that they didn't know what they mean. So, you know, one of the irrational factors that Greenspan said was driving the market turns out to be nonsense.
When people come to the seminar this January, what are the major outcomes that these participants can expect from this exciting new seminar that you're doing at Walt Disney World?
Well, what I've developed is a way that absolutely does greatly enhance people's critical and analytical thinking skills. So the people who come will go out with an entirely new skill set relating to how to think about problems and so on, innovative problem solving and so on. We might say thinking outside of the box. And of course, also with all of that, the mental improvement, along with that comes creativity. People who go through this say that it opens up their creative channel in a new way. And another thing we want to come out of this is just for people to have a good time, because nonsense is one of the structural principles of humor. So we're going to have a good time with this as well.
So there you have it. The opportunity to improve critical thinking skills, enhance your creativity, improve your problem solving, and be entertained and have a fun time doing it. So join us January 17 and 18 at the Disney Contemporary Resort in Walt Disney World with Dr. Raymond Moody.
So please come with us. We'll have a really good time.
Thank you.
I love to learn the logic of nonsense, and so will you.